Hey everyone, really exciting chat diving into the world of business messaging today with a startup that's doing a lot of very innovative work at Telgorithm. Aaron, how are you?
Great. How are you doing, Evan? Happy
I'm doing
Wednesday.
great. I'm in Boston. I wish I were in sunny LA, but c'est la vie. We'll have to wait another month or two for spring. But excited to join. You've been in the telecom and mobile industry for a long time. Maybe give us a bit of the origin story of Telgorithm and your sort of personal background or obsession with telecom.
Totally. Actually, I started my career. First of all, thanks for having me. Greatly appreciated. And I've been following you for a little bit and appreciate your audience as well and everyone joining today.
Thank
So thank
you.
you for taking the time, on everyone's precious time. I started my telecom career, a 20-year telecom career, actually working for a lesser known company called Verizon Wireless back in the early 2000s when there were these things called flip phones. I don't know if you remember, Evan, there used to be a thing called a StarTAC phone or the Motorola V phone. And I actually started in the retail world in New York City. I don't know if you could tell from the accent, I'm originally from New York. Um, and during that period of time, there was obviously a lot of leaps in the technology world, particularly in wireless. And so you picture yourself, even now, it's not as much, but you go into a wireless store, you kind of have it more today in Apple than you'll have it at Verizon. But there were actually technicians there that would actually troubleshoot your phone, whether it be the physical portions of the phone or the softwares on the phone. And then as time went on, the various different softwares on the phones and types kept changing. I mentioned StarTAC. I'm sure everyone's here remembers the LG phones and even the name, dare I say it, BlackBerry. I don't know if anyone recalls back in those days, consistently troubleshooting that. And telco interested me a lot. I spent about 6 years at Verizon Wireless doing various troubleshooting. And actually, the company that I worked for wasn't directly Verizon. It was a company that was hired to do technical work by Verizon. They had ended their contract after 6 years in, and Verizon Wireless actually offered me a position on their quality assurance team to kind of quality ensure the latest phones that were going to be launched and come out. And so that interested me a lot. However, I had spent 6 years in the wireless world, and telecom really interested me. And I was looking maybe to try something a little bit different in communications. And so I ended up taking a role at this mom and pop startup kind of company in the East Coast that was selling VoIP. And I don't know if your
Mhm.
audience is aware, you're aware, Evan, but VoIP technologies are based on solutions to the shortcomings of what's called TDM, which is what I like to call the World Wide Web of analog phones. And so many folks in the dinosaur age, like you had a PBX with all these channels and all these wires running your system, you're kind of very familiar with that setup. And VoIP was supposed to solve for that by virtualizing a lot of it, which it actually did. And so me coming into that portion on the VoIP side, I was able to learn VoIP quickly, but also understand the shortcomings of TDM versus the other path of TDM, then learning something that new. And at my time there, I spent about 3 years at this company. I learned a lot about VoIP, the VoIP protocol, but also a lot about carriers and how they work and how they correlate in the interconnected World Wide Web of phones. How does an internet-based call make it to TDM and vice versa today? You know, one of the things I like to point out is many times people say, yeah, my call is not recorded. I don't use any VoIP. I'm like, well, have you made a phone call outside of your own home? And so pretty much everything today, as everyone knows, is recorded in that regard. So I spent about 3 years there, and I migrated out to the West Coast. My wife is actually out, uh, was born here on the West Coast. We migrated out here about close to 8 years ago, out here to sunny LA. And I was looking for a new role. And I ended up finding a role at this company called Service Titan. I don't know if that name rings a bell.
It
They
does,
are
yeah.
currently a leading CRM in the home services industry. I joined them back in 2015, just after they had raised their Series A from Bessemer Venture Capital. And what was very interesting about that particular role to me is first of all, in a tech startup, they kind of give you the keys and you get to run with it versus, you know, in a corporate world, which is something I was looking for. But what I recognized very quickly, see, they're a CRM. Everyone here, I'm sure, is familiar with a concept called a CRM, Salesforce being the most famous. Well, there's these things called vertical CRMs, right? A sales service is more horizontal, but if you have niche specific things for your business, you're a plumber, you're a lawyer, today Appfolio, you go down the list, you're going to need certain specific things for your particular industry, and hence the advent of vertical SaaS or vertical SaaS CRMs. And ServiceTitan is one of these CRMs that supports the home services industry. Roto-Rooter, all the very famous companies you might have heard of in that industry, they service them. What's very important, particularly in that world, is having your communications. That's the lifeblood of your business. And one of the things early on that ServiceTitan actually had that many did not, had this thing called call tracking, which is basically the idea of you break your, a faucet, or you have an HVAC that goes out in the summer, you're going to call up Roto-Rooter. Roto-Rooter is using ServiceTitan. Well, ServiceTitan is able to pop this call, is able to record this call, but then had to forward the call back out to Roto-Rooter's Dinosaur phone system. It wasn't part of the CRM, but at least it was able to track and manage these calls inside of where the rest of the place they're running their business, where they're booking jobs and everything else that's going on in the CRM. And the same thing for text messages, right? I book a call, I get a text message as the homeowner that a tech is on the way with their picture so that I could track them kind of like an Uber to see when they're going to arrive. And so these are very basic, in some senses, very basic features and functions that are needed for the lifeblood of the business. And what I found at ServiceTitan is they had, I'm not going to mention the name here, but a very famous cloud communication API company that everyone's heard of was integrated with them. Why were they integrated with them? That's just because they did a good job branding. They were one of the first, and that's all they knew. But no one knew what was going on. So calls were failing. When they connected, there would be one-way audio, or a text message wouldn't get through. And when you would call support, the support people didn't know themselves what was going on. By the time you got something resolved, this issue was resolved. Now you have another issue. And so it kind of forced me to kind of push behind the layers, behind the scenes. So you have a cloud communication API company. Well, what is it that they're actually doing, and what is it that they're white labeling or they're reselling that they're not actually doing? They kind of try to find out, what will it take to simply get a simple phone call across or a text message across? And I started to dig and dig. It wasn't very easy. There's no, even till today, there's no ebook on this stuff. Unfortunately, there's so many people rely on. And I was starting to uncover many very interesting things, like what is a DCA? What is an actual aggregator? What is a carrier? What is a platform? What are all the components need to make a call happen? Now, me at ServiceTitan, I should never have to worry about this. I should just be able to go to this provider and not worry, but that's just simply not the status quo. That's not the case. Many of these providers, additionally, and I hate to say it, don't even care. They look at it as a commodity, and I get that business side of things. What do I mean they don't care? So let me give a very simple, everyday example to kind of highlight this. So let's go back to that example I gave earlier, right? Imagine, you broke your faucet, or your HVAC system went out in the middle of the summer. You call up Roto-Rooter. Roto-Rooter is using ServiceTitan to manage, their business. So what they're going to say is, Evan, can you give me your phone number so that I can have a text sent on your way with the information that about the technician, and you'll be able to track them? Sure. They start to give you the number, and it's a very crappy call. At the end of the call, instead of hearing a 9, you hear a 6. What's going to happen is they're going to hit the save button, and then they're going to go to the dispatch board in ServiceTitan, look up a technician that's available, and hit dispatch. Now, the logic in ServiceTitan says, when you hit dispatch, send a text message with this technician's information to you, the homeowner that's having an emergency right now. Now, what happens if I mistype that number? You're never going to get such message. You're going to get frustrated. You may try to call back in. They may be too busy to answer. You didn't get a message. You're going to call the competitor. What if it happens at AAA? AAA uses one of these type of CRMs, and you're caught on the side of the road. But let me tell you the crazy part about this. What's actually gone on behind the scenes? So ServiceTitan is sending an API call to their cloud communication provider. Now, their cloud communication provider instantly knows that this number is not real. They will never send out this text, but here's what they will do. They will bill ServiceTitan for the text, including a carrier pass-through fee, even though there isn't even a carrier, it's not a real number, who then is going to jimmy this fee across to Roto-Rooter. So not only did Roto-Rooter lose a customer potentially, cause a frustrated situation, they're now paying for a text message that wasn't even real, including a carrier pass-through fee. But I made money and I don't care about that. And this is one micro example of what goes on in the telco industry versus, let's paint a different picture. What if there could be a process where you can identify prior to sending a text, well in advance, is this number not only real, is the number in service with the registrar known as net number for all of messaging, and is it in service right now to receive a message? Now, is it a guarantee? No. But if I had some integration, meaning ServiceTitan had some integration with a cloud partner that had that set up, here's how that could play back again. I call in, you call in, Evan, saying you have an issue with your faucet or your HVAC system. You tell me I hear a 9 instead of a 6. I hit the save button. Instantly, there's a pop-up in ServiceTitan. Number doesn't seem to be valid. Please clarify with customer. Sir, Matt, I'm sorry, I might have misheard you. Can you repeat that again? Oh, that's a 6. Save. Boom. There's a lookup right there. And guess what? No one gets misbilled. Somebody gets their message on time. And that's all being proactive about things. And a lot of the way, unfortunately, cloud communication has been is very reactive. And when that reactive thing does start to happen, it's usually very delayed, leading to or noticing other issues that come about before your initial issue is even resolved itself. And so with this experience I had at ServiceTitan and being that customer and picking back all the layers, I actually got 2 patents while I was there building redundancies.
Oh, wow.
And a product there called Phones Pro, which is the concept of not having to download or connect, no CTI. Today, ServiceTitan is one of the few CRMs out there you can get rid of your entire phone system, nothing to download, nothing to install, no integrators. ServiceTitan has your phone virtually part of ServiceTitan.
Oh, wow.
They are your full phone provider, which is shocking today because if you look around the whole industry, you pretty much don't see that anywhere. Salesforce has a bunch of connectors, but even if you have a connector with some company, what if it fails? Do you call the phone company or do you call ServiceTitan? ServiceTitan tell you to call the phone company tell you to call ServiceTitan. Good luck. And it's an integrator. It's not fully meshed as part of that UI. And that really doesn't exist today for some reason. So with the issue of transparency, along with many of the things that are missing in the industry, is what led me down the path, including my co-founder, I worked with for many years at ServiceTitan. I'm building a company, a cloud communication company, beginning with text messaging because of all the new regulation, which is very confusing for a lot of people. And it's obvious that that would be the case, to try to actually build a product and technology with understanding that cares about your true bottom line, truly getting your message delivered, that puts us into the trenches with you, not just as a sales pitch, but in every day-to-day service, both on, again, technology front side and the service side of things, and also provide education. You know, one of the biggest things that we get all the time, many people ask is, are you a compliance layer or consulting agency that we could plug into Twilio? And while that is absolutely not the case, we look at that as our biggest compliment, because that should be the default for any provider that's offering you that. So much so that you believe they are in the trenches with you. They're educating you on this stuff properly and not hiding things behind the scenes. You know, one of the things we've done is I've interviewed the vice president of the campaign registry multiple times. We're very close with them, and they're part of this new ecosystem. I actually, you know, there's a company called Cineverse out there. I don't know if your customers are aware of this, but Cineverse is the largest aggregator, the largest text messaging aggregator in North America, the largest. All the major companies you've heard of are not aggregators. They are using Cineverse behind the scenes. Well, why do they hide that information? What's wrong with that? Many of them, they don't want to reveal what's behind the scenes, but that's not accurate. If you wanted to buy a can of Coke, Evan, you're not going to call up Coca-Cola corporate. They're going to tell you, go to your grocery store. There's different players in this ecosystem for a reason. We did a webinar last month with the director of all of 10DLC at Cineverse. My team had to work a month on building this webinar because they were never asked to do a webinar before with anyone in the industry. Well, why would that be? What are they trying to hide? And so a lot of what we're trying to do is trying to pull the curtain back of what's going on behind the scenes, provide transparency, provide guidance, be proactive with our customers, truly own up to what's going on if we fail, and make sure that businesses are ultimately successful. If you've been following us recently, we're now 3 years in. On the messaging side, we built a lot of unique technologies that are crucial for A2P 10DLC that many people don't understand. And we recently just announced a partnership last month with Constant Contact, who's partnered with us at this early stage because they are not able to get the help with some of the big name providers that you would imagine here. And thank God, we've also never had a churn in our history ever, which is insane to even think that we've never had an outage in our history ever.
Wow.
So we take these things very serious. We have hundreds of million messages a month rolling through our platform with none of these issues. Now, there are kinks, bugs, which we do address, and we're always listening to our customer. But this is fundamentally why Telgorithm was built and what we're all about and what we're going to continue to do one channel at a time. We're starting with texting. We're going to then go from there to phones as well and make the proper and necessary changes and make availability to different tools and products to make things more available for particularly vertical SaaS is where we come from, but the industry at large. And sorry for the long-winded answer here.
Wow, that was a mic drop moment. How much coffee have you had this morning, Aaron? You may need another couple of espressos to kind of bring yourself down a little bit. But I kid. No, it's very impressive. Your passion and knowledge, wow, of this space goes so deep. And I love you're peeling back the onion here because so much of telecom is still a black box. It's very mysterious. And even with the rise of APIs, it's not enough. You need to know what's going on behind the APIs. Well, let's dive into that a bit because you raised so many interesting questions. Maybe talk a little bit about how you do some of this magic. That's not obvious. To ensure things like higher delivery rates for SMS and reliability and transparency. I mean, What is your platform like, sort of behind the curtain?
Totally. So there's a lot of areas we can go down because it is complex. But again, if you're breaking it down, you kind of get, hey, this whole ecosystem makes sense. And I know we're short on time here, but I'm going to try to.
No, we're good. We can go as long as you can.
But I think number one is there's a big confusion about what A2P 10DLC actually even is in the first place, which is where it all kind of gets started. You see, again, without getting into all the details, the texting protocol, as we know it, as I was talking about when I had my flip phone, that was created back in the early 90s by the various different wireless carriers and the network operators. There was no internet like we have it today. There was no cloud communication as we have it today. The protocol that they created, which is what's called the SMPP protocol, was known as P2P, or person to person, because that was the only use case that existed. I am going to use my physical fingers to type out a message on maybe an alphanumeric phone, possibly, and send you a message.
Good times. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I don't know about you. I don't know how good you've gotten at typing physically with your fingers, with your thumbs on an alphanumeric phone, but the network operators thought, wait a second, what type of throughputs would we need to offer for this use case? And they thought about it, and they gave 60 TPM, or 60 texts per minute. I don't know about you, Evan. I don't know that many people that could type out physically 60 messages on an alphanumeric phone in 1 minute. And by the way, even if you could do it, I doubt you could converse with somebody in that fashion. And so hence, that's what they gave. And this worked for a while, and that was the intended use for person-to-person protocol. That was intended for. Now you have the advent of technology. You have the infrastructures behind messaging becoming virtualized, net number, aggregators becoming virtualized. And then you have cloud communications platform, many of them famous today. They figure, well, it became so personal. No one wants to talk to anyone on the phone anymore from that regard. Everyone answers a text. I don't have to install something differently. Even till today, everyone likes to use text. What better path would it be for a business to tap into this channel? Again, remember, this channel was never intended for that use case. And what ended up happening is the cloud communication providers that figured this out, along with the businesses paying them hand over fist for the support, started sending messages. And this started to cause problems. Well, what sort of problems? Well, number one, as we mentioned, 60 messages in a minute will be work for me and you, Evan, conversing, maybe. But if I want to run a Black Friday sale where I have millions of end users, I'm sorry, 60 messages in a minute, it might take 3,000 years to get there. And it's just not going to work. Same thing. And by the way, that's for marketing. What about an electric company? What about an electric company that has millions of users that wants to send out a text, emergency importance? 60 messages in a minute per number is not going to work. So what did they do? They started thinking, wait a second, one number, 60 messages a minute. I'm just going to procure 100 numbers. I'm going to procure 1,000 numbers, and I'm going to start blasting it. And indeed, that's what started happening. Again, not the intent for this protocol. It was not created for that. And so what ended up happening over that time is people said, hey, this is starting to work. And then people started spamming people, particularly in T-Mobile's case, which led to class action lawsuits on T-Mobile. Anyone listening here today that's familiar with A2P 10ELC, T-Mobile is the toughest, and it's not by coincidence. It's because they really got the hammer big on this front here. And actually what ended up started happening is before this turned into a change, it turned into a physical fight between when I say physical, I mean a technical fight between the network operators receiving those messages and the providers on the other side enabling these messages to go out. So they would be like, I sent this message, I didn't want it stopped. Okay, every third message, it seems my number is going to get blocked. So I'm going to create a number rotator known as snowshoeing, and I'm going to keep refreshing the numbers. Then this one did this, and this one had that filter, and this one to come back from that filter, and this URL got blocked, and back and forth and back and forth. And about 7 years ago, all the network operators essentially got together and they said, enough is enough. We need to do something about this. Number one, they recognize with the advent of technology, there are legitimate businesses that have customers that legitimately want to receive messages from those businesses. And there should be a path for them to receive those messages. The current path, P2P, was not meant for that. So therefore, we need to create a new path for business to consumer type messaging. And the biggest differentiator would be throughput. Here's the key. Many people lose this. They think it's about compliance. It's not about compliance. It's about throughput. I need higher throughputs as a business to communicate with my customer than a person that is communicating with another person privately. And so each individual network operator, beginning in February of 2020, Verizon Wireless launched their A2P, or what I like to call business to consumer messaging path. But they also recognized, meaning the network operators, that if they did this, what is to stop all of the nefarious activity that's festered over the many years on person to person from simply migrating over to now the easier path, A2P. So they needed some sort of gatekeeper to manage all of this. And they ended up finding a company known as Calera, which is a cloud communication company in Italy, who actually was recently acquired by Tata Communications, but they formed a subsidiary known as the Campaign Registry. And you go to campaignregistry.com, they have become the reputation authority for A2P 10ELC, where all the major network operators in the United States, and now it's expanding into Canada, and will be expanding even beyond that. Toll-free will likely be joining that ecosystem as well. The word is in the very near future. That's a whole separate subject. But they got them in place as this reputation authority to make sure that all players in this ecosystem are accounted for. And you have to give information prior to getting on this platform. You got to get your tax IDs. You got to put in your use cases. You got to have a working website with a working privacy policy. You have to show that you're an established business. And in return, you get access to these higher throughputs with much better deliverability. They needed to keep a clean path. But what's interesting about this is, and where I'm going with this, is throughputs are the key. You're not paying for compliance. Matter of fact, almost no compliance rules have changed. They're just being enforced to get into the entryway ticket into the new path. Most of the compliance from CTIA and the network operators are actually exactly the same. And what you're paying for is throughput. And that's what really got me thinking early on, wait a second. So if everything is about throughput, well, who's managing all this throughput? What do I mean? So there's this thing called a brand, which is an entity that's going to be sending text messages. And then there are their use cases, which are known as campaigns. Now, not all network operators are alike when it comes to throughputs on A2P 10ELC. So for instance, T-Mobile gives you a daily limit, meaning one brand, you could have 3,000 brands that are your customers. Each one has different limits to T-Mobile. Then they give a daily limit, meaning T-Mobile. AT&T gives a per campaign limit. Verizon gives a per number limit. Now you might think, well, why do I care about all of this? Well, first of all, you're paying for that. There's higher costs to pay for a low volume campaign than a dedicated campaign. There's also a concept called external vetting, which allows you to get even higher throughputs. At the end of the day, as we discussed, the business to consumer path was created because I need higher throughputs to communicate as a business. By the way, even for conversational, because you're not required to get a separate campaign for each individual rep at the call center. You could have 50 reps at the call center communicating one-to-one, but you're going to run into an issue very quickly because they're all sharing the same campaign. So many people think, oh, I don't market or I don't blast messages. No, even conversational messaging, you need to worry about throughput. But here's the interesting part. With T-Mobile, it starts at 2,000 messages daily to T-Mobile, right? Pretty easy to hit that. Now, if it's 2,000 messages daily, what happens if you hit the limit? Well, I will tell you what's going to happen. T-Mobile actively tracks that. The 2,001st message will drop. You will be charged a carrier pass-through fee for that message. Now, here's the crazy part. You spend all this time, effort, registering, spending all this money for registration, get higher throughputs, and you're now susceptible. Who's managing this? And so here's my point. If there's a daily limit, well, when does this day start? Is it midnight to midnight? And is it rolling 24 hours? If it's midnight to midnight, well, which time zone is it in? You know, Evan, Metro PCS and Mint, I'm sure everyone's seen the commercials for Mint, are known as MVNOs or subsidiaries of T-Mobile. Well, are those end users included into this daily limit? You would need to know all of this at a brand level for each of your customers, because each of them have different limits to manage this proactively. Because if it's reactive, you're going to already get failed messages and disruptions and higher costs. And so what we found shockingly, we thought when we founded Telgorithm, understanding this in detail, that everyone was going to build a management system as the provider. Come to find out, no one, including the DTAs, have built this. So everyone's going around registering.
I don't think there's anyone else out there who has the knowledge you have who could build it. I mean, you're a walking and talking repository of insight into this problem. It's amazing. Yeah. So basically, in a nutshell, you help your customers navigate all of these compliance and regulatory challenges to ensure the delivery rate. So what's the bottom line when with a new client? What can you guarantee in terms of like a service level or a commitment to that?
So I love this question. First of all, a couple of points on this front here. We're about trust. We give opportunity. We have pay-as-you-go trial that we give you the period of time to test us. You become a CSP of the registry. That's an independent process. That's a prerequisite for Telgorithm, where you could share campaigns with us, see if we can get them approved, see how fast we can get them approved. And you own that compliance yourself. On top of that, you could test to see how it works. We have a smart queuing system we built with all the logics some which I just touched on in place, that proactively does lookups on the fly into the OSR to determine who you are about to send the message to, calculate out how many were already sent per network operator, and we send you alerts, 50% or 66%, 2/3. We send you alert. If you ever reach 100% of your limit, we actually don't let the message fail. We queue it up for you until T-Mobile, as an example, resets its timer. We have time routing built into that. Oh, I don't want to send the message at 1 a.m. Instead, wait till 9 a.m. We have the ability to rescind messages. It no longer makes sense to send the message anymore. Rescind it. We don't even charge for a rescinded message. We have the ability to prioritize messages. So when it does get unlocked, send this set of messages first instead of this one. All of these things are built at the network operator level for each individual network operator based on your approvals that you share directly from the registry with Telgorithm. We're closely partnered with them. And this is not a nicety. I hate that we call it smart queuing because people think it's some AI or some nicety. We are looking to build AI into that to make it even better. But it's not a nicety. It is crucial and fundamental. Most providers today have taken one of two approaches. They'll completely lift the ceiling on T-Mobile, making you completely susceptible and unaware of this. Matter of fact, you can go to your provider's website today and Google, exceeded my T-Mobile day limit. Almost every single one has a very specific error set up for that. Well, if they were managing it for you, how would you ever get that error? So rather than try to build a process to support it, they already know you're going to run into the problem and have already pre-created an error that you're going to run into. And on the other hand, with AT&T and others, what they do is they queue it down. So they'll queue your messages to the lowest rate. And you might say, well, that's fine. But no, I just spent X amount of money to get higher throughputs on AT&T, and I'm being capped at the lowest level of all of my campaigns. So the point here is fundamentally the whole purpose of A2P is to give higher throughputs. But today, apparently, no one in the ecosystem is properly managing this for you. And if it's not being managed, you could be losing 10 to 20% of your total costs on top of all the initial costs in lost messages, not to mention the time, frustration, and disruption to your customer if you don't have someone that's managing this for you. And that's what we believe and what we've built as a default, that this should be every provider. We wish more would build this as well, because what we're about is a positive change to this ecosystem that ultimately supports the end user, and that's what's in our blood.
Oh, it's a wonderful mission. It's rare to see a startup like Telgorithm 3 years in, and you already have so much traction and you're helping so many customers. What's next? I mean, what are some of the big waves or trends you're looking to ride over the next 3, 10+ years? And technology wise, you have RCS coming in, a huge change or
Yeah,
opportunity as well. What are you focused on?
totally. So I mentioned on the top of the call, while I was working at ServiceTitan, I built this product called Phones Pro. And that's the concept of you open up the CRM and your phone is just there. There's no integrator, nothing to download, nothing to install. You just put on a headset. All the state of the art things that, let's just say, a dial pad or a Ring Central would be doing would be part of that CRM. And what's interesting about that is when I built this at ServiceTitan, I found that there is literally no one out there that makes this attainable to build for a vertical CRM. And that's why it doesn't really exist, but is in high demand. What do I mean? Well, Twilio type companies is an API based company. Well, if you're going to build a phone system, then you need a UI. You need a UI for call routing, time route, queues, setting up the phone, the dialer itself, the virtual dialer known as WebRTC. You're going to need skins behind that to figure out all the use cases. And all of these things need to mesh with your specific user experience within your CRM. Well, a Twilio type or an API cloud type company doesn't provide that for you. So how long is it going to take for you to get what's called an MVP or least viable product maybe to market for the phone? 2+ years. Try to go in your head of product and saying, I have this great idea. I want to bring phones into our CRM. How long is it going to take for an MVP? Maybe 2 years. There's no way they're going to do it. And that's the cloud API side. On the other hand, you have companies like I mentioned, Dialpad or Ring Central, where they provide the GUI, and very nice GUI, if you will, but there's no APIs that they're going to expose. And so how do you customize it and scale it for your particular application? If you tell them, hey, give me the APIs, they're going to tell you to go to Twilio. So how do I solve this problem? And so what you need to do is you need something that solves both. So this is something that's in tremendous demand and need. An example I like to give is there's a very famous POS system known as Toast, TOAST. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Oh yeah, no, it's everywhere. Restaurants, yeah.
Literally 7% of all restaurants, if I'm not mistaken, in North America use Toast. Well, Toast uses Twilio for their shortcode. They use that for there. But why is it that if you go to Jamba Juice, you'll notice who uses Toast, you'll see a clunky phone on the desk. Why is that phone not part of that POS system, transcribing, logging, all the details here? They heard of Twilio, they know about it. What's wrong? What's the matter? It's not that they don't want it. Go ask them. Why would they not want that all into one place? And it's because it's not attainable. What we plan on doing, and you asked what our future is, not only do we plan on expanding into areas like RCS and WhatsApp, but we also plan, and we don't want to lose focus on our core, which is not about all the bells and whistles. We want to make sure our fundamentals consistently stay there and we're stable, while we gradually work our way to the latest things to make sure we're doing it right without losing that focus. And so what we want to provide is a gap to that. And basically this concept of the ability to plug in, let's just say an iframe into your CRM that's fully customizable on day one. And then once you get that going, prove that to your customer base, we then expose the API so you can further customize that out into your CRM and make that custom for your customers there. That concept today, as far as I'm aware, and I've worked for SignalWire as well. I did a stint there as well.
I know you did, and FreeSwitch and the whole amazing crew there. So you have the bona fides to pull this off. So I think it's going to be exciting to watch. And just to wrap up, what are you excited about over the next few weeks, months? Any travel or events or meetings that you're going to be out and about attending?
I was just at MEF forum out of Miami. Met some amazing folks out there. Excited for Mobile World Conference as it's coming up as well. And excited for meeting the folks wherever they may be. I'm going to try to make my way to more of the shows. Don't always have the time to do it, to meet a lot of the folks out there. But so much exciting stuff going on. What I'll say is a lot of what we focus on is starting with a few things that are fundamental and crucial. And as I just mentioned, keeping the focus on making sure that's consistently getting better and it's right before going all over the place, because there's so many cool technologies. Everyone today is pushing AI, and AI just for the purpose of AI, in my opinion, is nothing. You want to make sure that AI is complementing something that's fundamentally already working and is solving a true problem versus just saying AI to AI. And we're something that we're very passionate about, making sure we get things right before jumping the gun on all of these bells and whistles.
Well, that's some advice that many people should adhere to. Thanks so much, Aaron, for
Of course, thanks
sharing
for
the
having me.
mission and the vision and all the success, and onwards and upwards to the next phase of Telgorithm. Thanks very much.
Awesome.
Thanks for watching, everyone. That was quite a deep dive, but really, really amazing insights there from Aaron. Take care. Talk
Of
soon.
course, thanks for listening in.